Here we go. All right, everybody. Hello, everyone.
Hi,
Welcome
everyone.
to In the Company of Charity podcast, the podcast by the Daughters of Charity. We're so glad you're here and listening to this very episode.
Because it's an important episode for sure. This is Sister Elizabeth, in case you weren't sure. I know
And I'm
sometimes
Sister
you're just
Liz.
wondering. Liz, yeah, good to
You
see you.
you know our voices. You know our voices by now.
They should, yeah, they should.
Listen, happy Lent to you.
Happy Lent to you as well. We just made our plans. Did you make plans for how you're going to celebrate Lent communally?
Yeah, so the first communal thing is we're going to Charo Days, which is it's like the Mardi Gras of South Texas. It's a celebration between our side, Brownsville, Texas, and
Mhm.
the Mexican side, Matamoros, which is right across. And there's a
Yeah,
parade, and it feels very much like Mardi Gras. Everybody dresses up. There's a giant parade, bands and music and food, and
and when does that happen?
tomorrow, as the moment of a recording, it's been happening, but the big thing is tomorrow.
Oh, tomorrow. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
We're waiting for a big parade too because we live in the Dogtown area of St. Louis, and the Dogtown area is known as the Irish part of St. Louis.
Mm.
And there are shamrocks painted on the street in front of our house, and there's this really big shamrock right in front of our house because that's the spot where the judges sit for the big St. Patrick's Day parade. So right in the middle of Lent, we will have this enormous parade come swooping by our house. None of us have been there. Like we're all brand new to the house.
Mm-hmm.
So none of us have seen this before, but we've been warned that like you can't leave your house. We're just going to have to sit there. And people are going to be everywhere. Like it's mob scene.
Oh my
And the
gosh.
parish across the street where we go to church, they're like, don't even think you're not even going to be able to get over across the street because it gets so crowded. They auction off. The church sits up a little bit on a hill, and so they auction off sitting areas
No way.
because it sits up high and you can see the whole parade. So they set up like a tent with a little table and refreshments and all this stuff. So that and then they auction it off for the church.
What
That
day
so
of
we're
the
waiting
week
for that.
is it this time?
I think it's a Friday of all days.
Ah, of course.
Yeah, I think so. I think so. So, anyways, that's our fun thing that's going to happen in the middle of Lent, you know. But
What's your
we've made
holy
some.
thing? What are you
It
doing?
is. I mean, it's St. Patrick. What's our holy thing?
Yeah.
Well, St. Joseph, which comes 2 days after St. Patrick. So we'll have something special. I have a couple of ideas. I'm not going to say
Mm.
it because the seminary sisters listen to the podcast. Hi, girls.
Hey
How are
there.
you? Hey there. Um, and so we're going to do a little something special on the Feast of St. Joseph because St. Joseph is the patron of the seminary.
Mm.
So that would be good. But last episode we talked with Gail Boss about her book, Wild Hope. And we had read the first book, All Creation Waits for Advent. And now, through a donor, a very good friend of mine, bought copies of Wild Hope for all of
Nice.
the seminary sisters, for the seminary community. And so we're reading that together for Lent. And Gail has agreed to Zoom with us to do a little talk.
Oh,
So we're very excited about that. So that's going to be coming up. And what else are we doing? And because of that book has a more social justice bent to it. We're going to be kind of doing some leaning into our social justice link, our efforts to be advocates for the poor.
mm.
And in the seminary, the sisters are not. They go out and serve 1 day a week, but they're not in full time active ministry, and so they're very anxious to be part of our life in the apostolate, reaching out and being with Christ in the poor. And so this is what we can do, is to do some advocacy work. So we'll be looking at issues of hunger and homelessness and yeah. just eco justice kinds of things. So we'll be
Sure.
doing um, some lessons in that through the Lenten season, and we'll eat our simple meal on Wednesday,
Very
using
good.
bread. Yeah. So yeah, I think we're going to have a good Lent. I'm excited.
And if the
I'm
people
excited about
haven't
it.
listened to the Gale Boss episode, do go back and listen after you're done listening to this one, which is going to be really amazing. So,
Yes.
um,
Yeah. Yeah.
super excited to present to you guys to this interview with Sister Bethany, who is a daughter of St. Paul. And you're going to hear all about her life and her story and just some really cool stuff about their ministry and what they do, and about St. Paul and some of his writings and quotes and all that good stuff. So, we love Sister Bethany, and she's very active online. So you can always find her out there, mostly on Instagram, but on the Daughters of St. Paul also have a lot of different channels on social media. So uh, they're doing the good stuff out there, and we're just trying to imitate them in our
That's right.
podcasts and social
We're
media
doing
outreach.
a little bit here, a little bit. And she is a great the sisters here are a great fan of hers. When I told them that this would be the next episode, they were like, "Wow, Sister Bethany!" They're so excited. So they're anxious to hear the episode when it comes out, which will be soon. So make sure that you watch for it.
Yes. So as always, you guys can reach out to us at our Gmail account, companyofcharity@gmail.com, and on Instagram, Company of Charity Podcast. We'd love to hear your feedback, any of your questions, and if you have suggestions for future episodes, send them our way. If you feel so moved about sending out this episode, catch the link or screenshot it and share it with someone who would love to hear it. And it's going to be awesome. So enjoy it, guys.
Yeah, have a happy Holy Lent, everyone.
Well, hello, everyone. This is Sister Liz here, and I'm with an old friend, and I'm so delighted to have her, Sister Bethany, of the Daughters of St. Paul, another daughter. So this is exciting. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here. I was delighted when you asked.
You know, I think we have to spend a little time talking about one of our favorite areas of the country, Western Maryland, where
Yep.
we first met. So
Yes.
tell the kids at home a little bit about you and about your pre-sisterly life and discernment.
Yeah. Well, I feel like I know you from like a whole other lifetime. Like,
Yes.
I met you when I was probably 17 or 18 years old,
Mhm.
and I was going up to Mount St. Mary's in Emmitsburg, because I think all of my friends were at school at Mount St. Mary's. And so I would go up and I would visit the Mount, like to the point where people thought I was a student there. Like that's how often I was
I
there.
just associate you with the Mount, even though you
Yeah.
weren't technically
Me
there as a student.
and my good friend Meredith, we would drive up like several times a week to up to the Mount. And we would visit, and Sister Liz was always there.
Mhm.
And,
And Father
um,
Brian Nolan, who is a
oh my
gem
gosh.
and just a
He just
good
married my
priest.
brother this weekend.
No
I mean,
way.
he didn't. He married my brother to his fiancee,
He
Krista. But
witnessed it. He did
yeah,
whatever
there
a
you go.
priest do.
He was there. He did his priestly thing at my brother's wedding, this past weekend. But yeah, so it's been like a week of reminiscing for me because I grew up close to Emmitsburg, which is a beautiful part of the country. You also grew up in Maryland, right, Sister Liz?
Yeah, my parents are from Northern Virginia. And
Okay.
so, I lived in Baltimore for a while, definitely connected to the Diocese of Arlington and
Hmm.
that whole crew of people from that area. So I definitely consider that area of the country my home.
Nice. Yeah,
Hmm.
me too.
The fall colors, man, you can't beat them.
You cannot beat it. My brother just got married up in Emmitsburg at St. Anthony's, right below the grotto, and just the colors are just starting to come out, and it is gorgeous. And I'm like
Yes.
soaking it in, which is beautiful. So.
Now, is that where you met the Daughters of St. Paul? Where did you meet
No.
them?
So I met the Daughters of St. Paul when, if anyone's heard me talk about my vocation story before, you might be familiar with this part, but I met the Daughters of St. Paul because my mom signed me up for a class at my parish. Um, and that wasn't uncommon. Like our life as a family kind of revolved around the parish, and that like we were there every Sunday. We volunteered at the parish. I was part of the children's choir. I eventually played for mass, like piano for masses. So we were just kind of we were involved in the parish. So it wasn't uncommon for my mom to like sign me up for stuff if she saw my friends were doing it. So my mom calls me downstairs and was like, "Hey, like I signed you up for a class at church, because all your friends were signed up for it." And I was like, "Oh, okay, cool, sweet, sounds great." She goes, "It's a vocations class," and I was like, "I heard vacations, not vocations." So I was like, "A vacation
Excellent.
class." I don't know what I like legitimately don't know what I thought was going through like my eighth grader brain. I was 13 at the time. I'm like, what did I think we were doing? Like, like we're gonna research the Bahamas, like, or like I have no idea how to budget for a family on vacation. No idea. But imagine my confusion and surprise when I walk in and there's a little sister of the poor just like standing there, full habit, and I was like, is she going on vacation with us? Like, what's happening? So I figured out very quickly vocation, not vacation. My bad. But the beautiful thing about this was that it was like a 6 week long class. And the lady that was running it invited different priests and brothers and religious sisters to come every week and just share their story, invite questions for all of us, which was really neat because in my life, I kind of grew up, if you know anything about like central Maryland, it's a little bit more like rural and like Farmville,
Mhm.
USA. And so the only religious I knew was like the one priest that had been at our parish for 12 years and like sometimes the other priest that came down when he was on vacation. Like I thought like the last nun alive was like Mother Teresa or like and even her, I was like, she's not like a classic nun. She's like another kind of like the last classic nun I thought was like Saint Therese of Lisieux, which was not even remotely true. But like I didn't know nuns really existed anymore. So anywho, my mom signs me up for this class. I go to this class. I'm shocked but amused and very interested and a little confused. So I'm sitting there and like this sister starts to talk and three things became really evident to me. One of them was that she deeply loved Jesus. Like she wouldn't stop talking about him. The
Mhm.
other thing that she kept talking about was her community and her sisters. And I was like, that's so cool. Like that family, that familial atmosphere that she lives in all the time. And then the other thing that was really evident to me was that she loved us. And I don't know if you've been in a room full of like 38th graders, but not a lot of people love a room full of eighth graders.
Yippee!
Because
Let's
we
hang
don't even
out.
love ourselves at that point. We're like, well, I don't want to be here. Nobody even wants to like be in their body at that age. At least I didn't. I
Hmm.
was like, well, everything is changing and you don't know what's happening. And everybody's asking you what you want to do with your life. And you're like, I don't know what I'm going to feel like in 5 minutes. So I don't
Yeah,
know what's happening right now.
exactly.
Eighth grade's rough, man. I never want to go back to seventh and eighth grade.
No.
Oh, okay. So I remember sitting there and listening to this sister, and like for the life of me, don't remember her name, which is very sad. I wish I could like tell her thank you, um, but when she spoke, those three things are really evident to me, and um, she also just radiated this joy and this peace, and like I remember at the time my family was going through like a little bit of a rough time. And I just remember like being like a lot of the adults in my life seemed like really stressed and like anxious. And this sister just radiated like this joy and this peace. And I was like, whatever she has, I want that. And like her incessant talking about Jesus was like, maybe that's the answer.
Mm.
And so then every week I saw we met like six different communities and different priests and brothers as well, and it was like the same common theme, like that they loved Jesus, that they loved their community, and that they loved us, and that they all radiated like this peace and this joy that I hadn't found anywhere else. And I was like, well, if all six sisters that I've met, if all of them have the same common denominator, which is Jesus, maybe I should go check it out because I like can't stop thinking about it. So
Mm.
we were all given at the end of this, didn't matter if you were interested or not, we were all given like this little booklet that had it had like different women's, like 50 different women's religious orders in the United States or whatever, and it had a picture, and then it had a little paragraph at the bottom. And I remember like flipping through them, and like, you know, when you're flipping through something, you're just like, nah. Because it's like all these pictures is like group pictures of nuns, which is like cute, but no. And then you've got like, I can't speak, pictures of sisters doing like their apostolate, which is cool. But then it's like, okay, pushing the elder. I'm like, oh, interesting, but maybe not. And then it was like holding babies. I was like, very cool, but let's keep going. And then it was like pictures of nuns walking through the woods holding rosaries. And I was like, ooh, that looks fascinating. Um, PSA, we don't do that usually except on retreat, but it looks very peaceful.
Love walking and praying the rosary when you have the time to do it. And
but the way that this, like, I think it was some Dominican congregation, which makes so much sense. But anyway, I was like, no. So I flipped the page, and there's this nun with a television studio video camera. And she's like not posed in any way. She's just like doing her job. And I was like, okay, that's hardcore. Like, that's cool. She had this like intense look on her face, but it was like this like joyful focus on like whatever she was doing. And I was like, that's epic. And I remember reading the description, and it was the Daughters of St. Paul. And it was the line that stuck out to me was that we proclaim Christ through the most modern forms of the media. And I had just said the week before to my mother, I had just gotten like an email address, like, wow, email's so instantaneous. And I was like, Mom, why doesn't the church just email everybody? And then like evangelization done. Like if everybody just email, like if the church is like emailed everybody, like, basta così, like we're good, we're done. The church has done its mission. She was like, that's how it works. And so when I like found the Daughters of St. Paul, I was like, well, these nuns must be doing that. So so I was like really fascinated. So I wrote to the sisters, and they invited me to the high school summer program in Boston at the Provincial House. So I went there, and from the moment I walked in the doors, I felt really at home. And there was a sense of peace. And I loved that the sisters really treated one another as sisters. And that was something that I really loved. And then I also felt like I visited because I loved the mission. I was interested in the mission, but the sisters really taught me how to pray. And our spirituality as Paulines, as the Daughters of St. Paul, spoiler alert, I entered. But our spirituality is based in the Word and the Eucharist. So really praying with scripture, especially with the Gospels, the Gospel of the day, and then Mass. And we make an hour of adoration every day. And I remember like really learning how to pray from the sisters, because then after that, I was like hooked. I was like, this is the coolest thing I've ever done, that I've ever seen. And like, I mean, we could go into all the caveats that my life took after that of like just weird little side roads that I was like, hey, Jesus, see you later. And then he was like, yeah, maybe not. So like just, you know, when you discover boys at a certain point, you're just like, yeah, maybe not the nun thing. That would be great. And then he brings you back because like he's the best lover ever. And so you're just like, okay, like, and he just brings you back on the road. Yeah, so I ended up like visiting the sisters every year at our provincial house. And then actually, when I started driving, we have a convent in Alexandria, Virginia. It's like an hour from my parents' house. So in my senior year of high school, I guess, senior year of high school, I started volunteering with the sisters in Virginia. And it was like a really hands-on mission experience. And every time that I visited the sisters, I was like, wow, like, this is what my heart was made for. Even though I would like kind of try to escape it in college, it was like really evident when I would visit the sisters. I'm like, oh, okay, this is it. Like, this is where my heart is. So I decided to give it a shot when I was 20 and never, I mean, I glanced back a couple times. I was going to say I never looked back, but
everybody, you know,
going.
you can wonder, right? You can say like, what would it have been like if I were a mom, or what would it have been like to get married, or what have you. I think that's kind of a myth busting here of, People always say, well, I never looked back. Well, you know what I'm saying? Like, you have
Yeah.
to see what you're choosing and choose it again and
Yeah.
again.
Yeah.
And that's a huge thing. Now, this is a bit of a fast forward, but were you aware that the Daughters of St. Paul were an international group, or was that something that you kind of progressively discovered? I'm sort of baiting you into talking about you going overseas to, was it in Rome or Italy?
It
Where
was
did you
in
go?
Italy. I was in
Okay.
two different locations. So to answer your question, I did from I think the first time I visited, the sisters said like we're an international community. And it as like a little farm girl from Maryland, I didn't totally understand what that meant. But the more that I discovered what that meant, it scared the living daylights out of me because I had no desire to like go be a missionary in China. Like that was just like I was like, it's very cool for somebody to go do that. And I think that that is very needed in the church. But I never felt that personal draw on my heart. So it scared me and it was a huge part of my discernment. Um, but the more that I have grown in love with Jesus and the more that I've understood our mission, the more I have embraced our international flavor. And honestly, like living in an international community means not only is there possibility for me being sent away, but I get the privilege of living with other sisters from other countries who come to the States. So like living with like Korean sisters and Mexican sisters and like all the different foods and
Mm.
holidays that comes with like it is the highlight of my life. Like I love international living. Um but yeah, so I did live in Italy for a whole year last year, which was crazy town. I lived in Napoli and Naples, in the south Italy, southern Italy, um, to learn and study the language. So I was there for about 5 months, and then we were in a little seaside town um, for about five months or so, right outside of Rome. After that, and the first 5 months we were living in one of the Italian communities. We were learning Italian. We were, yeah, just trying desperately to learn as much as we could. And then the second set, when we were outside of Rome, we were living in an international community. So it was all of the sisters that were preparing for final vows that summer. And so we were 17 sisters from 13 different we were 19 sisters from 13 different countries.
Wow.
Yeah. So, including our
That's so
formators.
cool.
It was so cool and like provided for a lot of like hilarious and frustrating interactions when it came to language because like some of us learned Italian better than others and everybody has their capacity for language.
If you're sort of musical, they say, if you have a musical background, that it maybe is slightly easier compared to someone who doesn't. But I
I
don't know
found the
if you found
musical
that.
background helpful for pronunciation and like being able to like sound better and to be able to like parrot people when they spoke to you. But I'm a terrible memorizer, and that's where my downfall was
Mm.
because it was like trying to memorize verbs and nouns and things. It was like, oh, I don't know what this word is.
Talk about sort of the connection to, being in Italy, seeing Rome. I assume you went to some of the
hmm
churches,
hmm
you know, biggest, most famous locations over there. Like, talk about what was that like for you to be in the heart of the church, and then these different sites, obviously connected with St. Paul.
Sure. Um, when we were there, we got to see obviously like the major sites in Rome, like St. Mary Major, St. John Lateran, the Vatican. Um, a couple of our sisters work in the Vatican, so we got a couple little tours of different places in the Vatican, which was really fun. And being there in all of like the grandeur of the church, I think the thing that I really loved is like I don't know, just seeing the faithful that were there, that was something that was really striking me. And just seeing like the majesty of the architecture. Like my family is all pretty artsy, and so like I've always had a great love for art and architecture, and I think that that was a huge like really impactful moment for me just to see how people have honored the Lord with their gifts in that way. Um and being in the heart of the church was really impactful. But I think the thing that sticks out to me most was that my group went on a little Pauline pilgrimage, and we went and we walked the Appian Way where St. Paul walked. We visited Tre Fontane, which is like the three fountains. So it's the tradition where St. Paul was beheaded and then his head bounced 3 times. And the tradition goes that as the head of St. Paul bounced, he said the name of Jesus. So it was Yeshua, Yeshua, Yeshua. So he continued to preach the name of Jesus even after his death. And that's tradition. That's not doctrine or written down anywhere, but it is the tradition that he continued to preach Jesus even after his death. And so being there was such an incredible moment, and to see that pillar where tradition says he was beheaded. And we actually, it was the Feast of St. Joseph that day. And so we had Mass actually in the chapel of the Three Fountains. And they asked me to cantor for the Mass. So
Wow.
I'm just like, I'm standing up there shaking in my boots because we have no musical accompaniment. So it's just me and my little voice ringing out through this little chapel. I don't even remember what the responsorial psalm was because I was so nervous, but I just remember it being like a glorious antiphon and just being like, I don't know, I can't even like totally put words to it, but it's just a really impactful moment for me to stand there where my father, St. Paul, was martyred, and preach the name of Jesus until and even after his dying breath. And that's what I'm called to do in my little voice that's echoing through this little church, this marble church. Yeah, it was just like, okay, like Casey Paul, like give me the voice. Give me the voice. Yeah.
Wow.
So we did that. And then we also visited a lot of the places where our founders lived, grew up, were born in, the first places of our foundations. And that was an incredibly impactful moment for me. Like, especially there's a moment, sorry, this will be quick, but
This is great.
there's this moment where our founder's name is Blessed James Alberione. And Alberione, when he was 16, he was in seminary, and he had just been kicked out of the seminary previously because he had been reading too many books. And I always tell the kids,
dare you?
well, here's the thing. I always tell the kids, I'm like, I know that sounds really nerdy, but at the time it was like he was Netflix binging instead of doing his homework. It wasn't like he wasn't reading anything bad. He wasn't like doing anything like wrong or evil, but what he was doing was not really paying attention. And the priests were just like, listen, we don't need any mediocre priests. So like, sayonara, buddy. Have a nice life because you're not really serious. And he was like absolutely devastated because he had said since the time he was in second grade that he wanted to be a priest. And he realized how much of an impact media had on him. And the media of his time was books and magazines. And he was like, if I, who know what I want to do with my life, can be so influenced by media, how much more are people influenced who don't really know what they want to do with their lives or don't have a good prayer life? Like, how much more? And so he's praying in this chapel in his second seminary. He's on probation. He's not allowed to wear the cassock because they were like, you have to prove yourself, like to get back into seminary, but you can take the classes. So he's kneeling there. It was tradition at this seminary for them to do all night adoration from December 31st to January 1st. And so he's praying, and it's this night, we call it the night of light, that he feels called, he says in his words, to do something for the Lord and for the people of his time. It's in that chapel that he feels called to start the Pauline family, to have religious who are dedicated to not only using the media, but for praying in reparation for the bad media, for media that's being used poorly. So to pray in reparation for that. And so that was the birthplace, really. That's kind of where we say like we were like born, really. And he prayed there for 4 hours. in front of the Blessed Sacrament and was just inspired to begin this. So we got to go as a group to this. It was in the cathedral in, oh my gosh, I'm blanking, in Alba, Italy, at the Duomo. And so we're in a little side chapel, right? And this was the chapel where he had prayed and really like was inspired to begin the Pauline family. And we're sitting there, and it was such a beautiful moment because I was realizing like 100, this was in 1900 that Alberione was praying there. And we're there in 2022. And there were some other sisters with us. So we were like 30 daughters of St. Paul from like 20 different countries, and just like praying there together as Paulines. And it's like just the connection that I felt to our founder, and just like thanking the Lord for the gift of our charism in the church, and thanking the Lord for the gift of our founder, and for like his grace in my life and then the lives of all my sisters that I was there with, was like one of those moments I will carry with me for like the rest of my life, because it was such an amazing moment. And bonus, they couldn't find the lights. And I don't know if you've been to Italy, but when they turn on the lights in a church in Italy, it's like interrogation floodlights in your face. So when they couldn't find the lights, I was like, that's fine, that's great. So it's like very like romantico, like mood lighting. I was like, this is amazing.
It definitely
like,
set the mood, and you're in a good spiritual place.
Yeah.
I love
so it
that.
was like, it was just this really amazing moment. Yeah.
Wow. I think that every religious group has those stories where it's like their founder, their one of their key sisters, or a saint that they're following after, has that God moment. And to be able to go to that place, we have the same. St. Louise had her Lumiere in Nicolas de Champs, which is in Paris. But you know, you're in that space, and it's like you can't believe that you are sharing the same space as your founder, and that is just, there's nothing that can replace it.
Right. Yeah.
So
We
amazing.
just, yeah, we got to like tour so many different places that were impactful in his life. And one of my favorite sisters, which I can say because she's everybody's favorite, Sister Mary Joan Baldino. She's a sister that I lived with when I was a postulant, and she's like 93 now. But she did her novitiate in Rome, and she like lived in Alba also, which is where we were founded in northern Italy. The town of Ferrero Rocher, you know, those like little golden chocolates.
Those are so good.
He like not is the reason, but he like funded our life for like the first beginning part. So the sisters like at Christmas always buy Ferrero Rocher. They're like, it's because he's such a good man. I'm like, he's long gone, but like it's an excuse to buy hazelnut chocolate. So what are you gonna say? No?
Right, exactly.
Anyway, Sister Mary Joan was like giving me, like emailing me and the two other American sisters that were with me. And she was like, okay, this is where he used to kneel in this church. This is where he used to stand in this church. So we're like breaking away from the group to like go sit in particular like pews and stuff.
You have all the secrets.
Yeah. And our formator is like, what are you doing? We're like, nothing. Alberione used to sit here. And then all the other sisters like come over. Like, I want to sit there.
So cool. So cool.
So funny. Yeah.
So before we have to eventually wrap up here, because we could stay all night, really.
Oh, absolutely.
This is great. I want to see if I can pick your brain a little bit about the letters of St. Paul. You know, some of the wisdom that we can find, and it can maybe seem overwhelming, and it's like, listen, can we just stay with the Gospels because there's enough there? But here's somebody who used the medium of his time in letter writing to evangelize and encourage, you know, the local churches. And so, do you have some favorites you want to share?
I absolutely do. And actually, fun fact, when I was entering, I did not like St. Paul all that much because I thought he was very mean, because
You stupid
hear,
Galatians.
yes, exactly. You stupid Galatians. I was like,
Scary.
how dare he? I thought he liked those people. And he's like walking around calling people stupid. Like, how mean and unfatherly of him. And then I'm like, and then is he like, what is happening? Because then he's like, love is patient, love is kind. I'm like, what? Choose your lane, bro. Like, pick one. And so I was like annoyed by St. Paul. I did not like him. And it's only because of my sisters who have had a great love for him, who have really like opened up his letters to me and like helped me encounter him as our father, because we're the daughters of St. Paul, which makes him our father. Like, he is our father, Paul. And so he's like, as a dad, he does offer some correction. Sometimes I do deserve to be called a stupid Galatian, but he does it out of love. That's something that I love about him. Anytime he says something that seems harsh, there's a reason. And sometimes in good parenting, you need to be just a little harsh in order for like the full effect. Because he tried to say it nicely before and they were not listening. So he was like, listen, stop being dumb. Like, please. Anyway, one of my forever favorites of St. Paul is one of the ones that is like most quoted, but it's the one that's impacted my life the most. There are two, but the first one is from 2 Corinthians 12, where he says, my grace is sufficient for you, for power is made perfect in weakness. I would rather boast most gladly of my weakness in order that the power of Christ may dwell in me. And just like that, my grace is sufficient for you has really like carried me through, and it carried me through a lot of my discernment, because I don't know what it was like for you, Sister Liz, but when I was discerning, I was like a very like, know-it-all's not quite the right word, but I was like, my grace is sufficient for me. Like,
I'm good. Yeah.
I got it. Like, if I can't do it, that means I'm a failure. And it's like, because this line, my grace is sufficient for you, is Jesus speaking to St. Paul in a moment where St. Paul really is like, he can't save himself. Like, in a moment where St. Paul is like, I don't have anywhere else to turn. And the Lord is like, my grace is sufficient for you. And when I was discerning, I was like, I didn't know if I could trust that kind of love. Like, I didn't, like, when you're discerning, you're like, Jesus, if I step out on the water, I mean, to bring in the gospel, but like, if I step out, are you gonna catch me? Like, is your grace sufficient for me? Like, and like my power, or like my way of being, feels really freaking comfortable. So like, I'm good. I don't want to be weak. To be weak means like, it's got a really negative connotation for me, and I don't want to be weak. Like, can't you be strong? Can't your power be made perfect in my strength? Like, can we make that like the line? Like, my grace is sufficient for you, even though you're sufficient enough for yourself, and my power is made perfect in your strength. Like, that sounds way more comfy for me. Because it's like, I want to do it myself. And in entering religious life, and then especially in being in religious life, realizing how very little power I have, like, there's so little that I actually do have control over, and the things I do have control over, I grasp at. And like, to have Jesus continually remind me, like, my grace is sufficient for you, and my power is made perfect in your weakness. Like, it is okay to be weak because it's there that I'm strong. Like, I will make up whatever is lacking. Saint Faustina is my confirmation saint, and she says something like, oh, I'm gonna butcher it because I don't have it written down in front of me, but she says like, Jesus, you have to do it, and you will. Like, Jesus saying, I will make up whatever you lack. Like, I promise you that I will make up whatever you lack. And in my own life, I've found that over and over and over again. And in the moments like when I've gone through a really rough time, because spoiler alert, even if you become a nun, you do go through rough moments.
Shocking, you're not perfect and you're human.
Wait, what? I know everybody is like, you're not sparkly, joyful, cheerful all the time. I'm like, no, believe it or not, I do not skip down the hallways every day. I get very tired. I get discouraged. I get like bad things happen to good people. Like
Mm,
it can be really, really rough, and it can be really, really hard. And the other verse that's carried me through times like that is not only knowing that his power is sufficient, and his power is working in my weakness and will make up for my weakness. But there's a chapter in Second Timothy, and that is one of my favorite letters, is his letters to Timothy, because Timothy's like this young kid who doesn't totally know what he's doing. But
mm,
St. Paul's like, I'm gonna tell you what's up. Like, I'm gonna be straight with you. And it's like all his like big brotherly advice. And that's why I love Timothy. Um, but Second Timothy, in the very first chapter, he says, I know him whom I've believed, and I am convinced that he is able to guard what I have entrusted to him until that day. And that's something that, as I've like matured in my relationship with Jesus, that like I have seen him, I have seen that his grace is sufficient, even though sometimes I act like I don't believe it. I have
mm,
seen that his grace is sufficient because I know him whom I believed. I know that he is faithful. And I know that if I can continue to trust in him, that he will do it. Because this last part of like, I am convinced that he is able to guard what has been entrusted to me until that day. That like, even when I can't, he can. And that's something I pray to Jesus all the time. I'm like, I can't, buddy. Like, you can, and you have to. like,
mm,
like I can't do this. You have to. And not in a giving up way, but just in like this recognition of like, I can't do it. My vocation is not my own. My life is not my own. You have to do it. Like, um, so
You know,
those,
while
yeah,
you were talking, it just comes back to me about how important it is that we're steeped in scripture, because those are the things that are going to come up in our spirit
yeah, mm,
in the times when we're, driving a car or walking down the street or struggling with something. you know we need to have those things memorized, those things, on our, what do you
mm,
call the lock screen on your phone,
yeah,
whatever your wallpaper
mm-hmm,
is, or something as you walk out the door, or on your
mm-hmm,
mirror in the bathroom. I mean, I know that may sound a little self-helpy to some people, but to have those things seep down into your soul
yeah,
like a song, you
yeah.
know
I
and
have a
and I
whiteboard on my closet door that I like. Often it's things I have that I need to remember to do, that so they're right in front of my face in the morning. But at the very top, I always put like a verse that like Jesus is speaking to my heart. Maybe it's up there for a day, maybe it's up there for a week, maybe it's up there for a month. Like, but it's like whatever Jesus is speaking to me. That's something that I think is such a cool and practical tip for people, is to like be
mm,
able to put whatever, like whether it's a post-it note, a whiteboard, expo marker on your mirror, like
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. So, last thing, what are your thoughts for young people making life decisions? We always have, folks who are young adults or discerning, making big life choices. What are your thoughts about that, specifically around like how to pray or how to use media? I mean, I think there's maybe some people who are like, wait, these sisters are suggesting media and I'm trying to get away from that because it's so like
Yeah.
addictive and bad and all of that. So what are your thoughts on that, and how can we maybe use media to help us in our spiritual life rather than it be a distraction?
Hmm. Yeah, I think the first thing with like discernment and really just life is like to really focus on your relationship with God. And that's how you can orient everything else in your life. That includes social media, any of your devices, whether you're using them for social media or not. I have friends that claim they're not on social media, but they're on their phones all the time. So it's like you, I would I would hope that you use your device, that your device doesn't use you. Um, and to be intentional with that. So I think it's really important to set a focus on like, okay, like what do I want out of my life? And it like, and a really like to keep your relationship with God front and center. So if things are taking away from that, then you need to look at that. So I think it's important when you're using media to look at how that impacts your relationships around you, whether that's with your family, your significant other, your community, like where's your time going? And I think that leads you to like kind of like an examination of conscience of the media. And so I always suggest that for people. I know there's some online. Our sisters run the Pauline Center for Media Studies. So if you go on, I don't know what the website is, but if you Google Pauline Center for Media Studies, Pauline is spelled like Pauline, the woman's name, you'll find our website, and there's so many cool resources on there. And I'm pretty sure there's an examination of conscience for using the media on there. Pretty sure. If not, we should write one. I know it exists. So I think that's really important, is to do an examination of conscience of the media, like how you're using it, even like watching, like whether you're watching Netflix or YouTube or going on social media platforms like Instagram and Twitter and TikTok, like where is your time going? And then to really set a focus. I think those would be like my most succinct tips.
And if they're going to limit their time to anything, they should limit their time to things that you guys put out, such as your podcast
and the Daughters of Charity.
I mean, you're listening to this right now, so thank you. Where can people find you and the Daughters of St. Paul?
Yes, you can find us on all, I think, social media platforms. My community at Daughter St. Paul. And you can find me on pretty much all social media platforms at SR Bethany, F as in fish, SP, FSP. Cool. So SR Bethany, FSP. Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, it has been absolutely delightful to have you.
It's been a joy, thanks.
I appreciate it. And as someone who knew you when you were a wee babe, it's really cool to see you just shine and walk straight into your calling and to just be a light. And so thank you for that.
It's a joy to have you as a witness and inspiration to me, like to have the witness of my sisters that have gone ahead of me is so cool, and that includes you, obviously. So thank you for being that for me.